Okay, we're going to have a panel discussion now looking at the process of accelerating and incubating the future of US biomanufacturing. And to take you through this panel, delighted to welcome from the Biomimicry Institute, Sarah McInerney, who is the Programme Director of Innovation at the Institute. So, Sarah, please.
Awesome. Will I grab a seat first?
Yeah, well, are you going to...
Yeah, we'll let everybody come on.
Microphones just switch them on. Just flick up, yeah.
Awesome. Hello. Okay. We're off to the races. Hi, everybody. Thank you for being here. I am the Program Director of Innovation at the Biomimicry Institute. My name is Sarah McInerney. Within Biomimicry, what I do is I work with nature-inspired startups who are scaling climate tech to address some of our most pressing environmental challenges. So that is the work that I do, but today I'm here with an incredible panel, and we are going to discuss what it takes to incubate the future of US biomanufacturing. We've had some great speakers over the last 2 days, from our corporate partners through regulation and the whole way down to startups and innovation. So it's amazing to see the pipeline through the entire process. So I'm really excited to be joined by you all here today. So we're going to really get into the depths of what it takes. What is the journey from innovation, from startup through scale up to commercial success? What are the technical hurdles, the regulatory hurdles, the funding gaps, and what is the infrastructure that we really need to succeed within this space? So really want to thank again this event. It's amazing to see the diversity of people who are in this room and the perspectives, and this is really what I believe we need for success, is to see the collaborations and the partnerships happening throughout yesterday and today. So thank you all for being here. So I'm joined by 3 incredible leaders within this space coming from very different perspectives. So what I would love to do is just pass it over to both or to all of you to give just a quick introduction, and then we'll get into the meat of it. So Chern, I'll hand it over to you.
Yeah, thank you again for the invitation. My name is Chern-Hooi. You can just call me Chern. So I'm the founder and CEO of Iridium. So what we do is we have developed one of the world's most efficient process that converts bioethanol to bioacetic acid and bioethyl acetate. Acetic acid is one of the highest volume organic chemicals out there. So essentially, we want to decarbonize chemical from the front end of the chemical manufacturing supply chain.
And thanks for having me. Brian Jacobson. I'm Associate Director of the Integrated Bioprocessing Research Lab, IBRL. We help companies scale up and the pilot scale up to about 1,000 liters. I also help manage infrastructure for the iFAB Tech Hub. So our main goals are to help scale and then help with the manufacturing aspects of a lot of the companies and technologies we're hearing about today. Thanks.
Good morning. My name is Geoff Horst. I'm the Chief Innovation Officer at Ecovia Bio. And Ecovia Bio makes a biodegradable molecule called polyglutamic acid. And this is a drop-in replacement for polyacrylates, which is commonly found in baby diapers, but also hundreds of other products and lotions. And that's actually a major source of microplastics. And so we're doing our part of trying to reduce the microplastic pollution.
Awesome. Great. Yeah, I wouldn't have been able to say it as well as they did. So thank you all for that. And now that you know who's talking to you for these next 20 minutes, let's get into the meat of it. Let's really understand what are the challenges that startups are facing for scaling. I had a great conversation with an individual here yesterday, which was talking about first-time founders or deep tech founders and the spin out within the current market that's always changing, and that you don't know what you don't know until you have to find out, unfortunately. So, Geoff, I'd love to hand it over to you to really understand what are some of those often underestimated challenges that startups face in the scale-up of biomanufacturing.
Sure. Thanks, Sarah. So this is actually my second fermentation startup. The first one I had was called Algal Scientific, which we started probably 15 years ago. It was a algae fermentation technology. So we were the first to scale up the fermentation to produce commercial scale beta-glucan, which is an immune molecule. And so we were one of the few algae companies to actually make a profit, and we were acquired by Chemin about 10 years ago. And Chemin has since taken it on to global scale. And so, from that perspective of going from lab scale, idea stage, all the way up through acquisition, that does actually give you a bunch of scars on your back. And so you actually get the experience of understanding how do you actually translate something in the lab all the way up to something that's going to have the proper unit economics to be attractive for acquisition. And so the failure rate for startups is exceedingly high. What we're all trying to do here is really difficult. And so you have to almost get everything correct, but that doesn't mean you have to get it correct all in the first try. And so I think, the perspective of having done that startup for 10 years is that all these small incremental steps that you do, all the failed experiments are really all part of helping to drive down those unit economics. And so I think one of the discussions yesterday from the venture group was, being hyper-focused on the unit economics is really important here. And so now with Ecovia, we were super focused on trying to figure out where should we put our limited resources, being both time and money. And so if you look at your cost of goods, I think if you target the biggest price ticket items, whether it's your raw materials or your CapEx or where you're doing your tolling, try to actually just drive those down reasonably and then choose when to stop. Like when do you stop doing the R&D? When do you just say this is good enough for the time being and then move on? And so I think part of the discussion here is also where do you do those steps? Do you do them in-house? Do you do them at some sort of partner research group? And for us, we were making high-value molecules both with the algae as well as with Ecovia Bio. And so we're going for very high value and relatively low volume initial beachhead markets. Eventually, we'll be able to target those markets like baby diapers, which is effectively like a commodity. But first, we're targeting cosmetics. And so our goal has always been, let's actually just build a scale that can be profitable on our first tank. And so we just commissioned our first commercial facility last week. And so we're going to be profitable just in that single first phase. And that gives you a lot of flexibility to then increase scale further to then enter some of the lower value but higher volume markets.
And I want to build on that because a lot of conversations that we've been having over the last couple of days and when we were preparing for this panel was talking about that initial front end of the biofermentation process and the kind of bottlenecks and focus areas that we need to contribute to at that front end. So Chern, I wanted to hear a little bit from you about how do you navigate scale up beyond that conversion step, like overlooking some of those costs in relation to product purification. So how do you move through the challenges of scale-up more downstream?
Yeah, I think a lot of startup very excited in the front end of the process of conversion. But chemical engineering has a principle of small head, long tail. So the long tail being the purification. So conversion, great. That's your secret sauce, but you have to think about purify it to the grade, that your customer wants. So for acetic acid, it would be glacial acetic acid, for example. Some people need glacial grades. Even within the glacial grades, you have food grades, electronic grades. So glacial acetic acid only define your product purity, but a lot of time people actually pay is for your ability to remove additional impurities, like your metal content and things like that. So yeah, don't underestimate, purification. So especially, some technology can make a bunch of different products, which is good and bad, depends on how you look at it. Purification can be a nightmare. So, yeah, just keep it, think about engineering principle, keep it simple, stupid, as simple as possible, if possible, yeah. So another key thing I'd like to touch on is feedstock qualification, because I think, don't underestimate that because there's a plant in Europe that started up $200 million. They couldn't run it properly because they were using feedstock from Eastern Europe versus Western Europe, but they did not test it. And they got lots of problems even at industrial scale, commercial scale. So you would have thought you should have solved that problem in pilot plants, right? So as a result, we want to learn lessons across the industry. So for us, for example, we're using bioethanol. So through the help of corn associations, we are looking into sampling bioethanol across different states, across dry and wet mills. right? So to make sure there's no contaminants that can really screw up your process.
I think that's a great pivot point over to you, Brian. Given the role of pilots and how do you actually scale infrastructure at the early stage so that you can have that validity as you're getting into these larger scales for manufacturing. So I'd love to hear a little bit from you around the iFAB Tech Hub and what kind of infrastructure and pilot capacity you're supporting early stage innovators to navigate that valley of death moment that we hear so often.
Sure. So the iFAB Tech Hub was mainly grown out of a lot of frustration at our IBRL facility. We were funded by the state of Illinois, opened in 2018, worked with about 140 companies from that point till today. And we think we did a really good job with helping on some of the technical aspects, getting companies to fermentation to the 1,200, 1,500 liter level. But there's a lot of challenges that surrounded that still that were there. Supply chain is an issue, and we realize that we've got partners nearby that if we're more incentivized to work together, could be really big advocates and help with that. We grind more corn in Decatur, Illinois than anywhere else in the country. We have great educational institutions to help with workforce development for those who just don't have quite the right people and the right expertise, a big network that's there. We have great equipment vendors and equipment partners, and there's nothing worse in pilot than having almost the right equipment, but having to see a 6 or 7 figure bill to get just the right piece that you need for the scale up. Construction firms that can help with the engineering and other pieces that are there, and they were all around us, but we needed a bit of an incentive to get everybody to work together, and that's what the EDA program did for us. We applied for that, received $51 million to help put this program together. It's a consortium right now of 35 members, but a much larger group of stakeholders. We are located in East Central Illinois, but anyone can have access to it. I'm sitting in Nebraska, and we would love companies to look at Illinois as being a good spot to put their technology after going through scale. But we all know the Midwest is generally is the right place to put it. So it's a good spot to do this. The good thing about this, and coming from my background, is we had a 1-to-10 ratio, government money to private funds that went into this tech hub. So it's not all government money. There's a lot of private investment, some state investment that also went into making this possible. The things you're going to get to see out of the iFAB Tech Hub is 4 new facilities. So we're going to have an expansion of our incubator space in our research park on campus, particularly around wet labs. So companies that want to incubate there, we'll have that present. The IBRL facility, which is kind of the funnel for all the great ideas around the country to come and show up. We're going to expand that another 40,000 square feet, so we'll have 100,000 square feet of pilot plant space on campus. But really what's most important is our partners in Decatur, Primient, working with Synonym Bio and ADM, are going to have facilities at the 10,000 liter level and the 80,000 liter level. Both of those are funded. We're moving forward in the design and construction phases of those. But the idea being that a company could come in and work with any of those partners, but ideally could work with that whole scale-up pathway all the way through. Get rid of a lot of the friction and definitely keep companies here in the United States rather than where a lot of our companies, early companies from IBRL, were going overseas to do manufacturing. So we're trying to get all the expertise in the same room and get the right people there to make it a little bit easier, get rid of some of that friction as you move through those steps.
Amazing. And I want to pass it back over to you, Geoff, then coming from the innovators, founders perspective. Could you share some examples of what type of partnerships or working with the likes of tech hubs or accelerators or incubators that you've seen be mostly critical for your success?
Sure. Both with Ecovia as well as with Algo Scientific, we definitely took advantage of tons of different partnerships. And so recently with Ecovia, we were actually down at Brian's IBRL facility down on the Illinois campus, which is great. And we've also been to University of Nebraska. We've been at Michigan State. And so we tried to just figure out, okay, we want to test a new piece of equipment. Where are we going to try to find that? And where's the accessibility? Where's the scheduling? And so that's how we've kind of been using at least the tech side of the equation. We've also used university partnerships to even do demonstration of product performance. And so in a lot of our industries, you need to be able to demonstrate performance, either equivalency to the original incumbent molecule if it's a synthetic molecule, or even just demonstrate applicability. So if you're doing some sort of ag product, you need to be doing field trials. And so a lot of the universities in the Midwest will be your partners for trying to do field studies. What we haven't done is actually the tolling. And so that's where, getting back to the fermentation side, with us having a higher value molecule, when we looked at the cost of goods side of things, we realized, hey, we can't go all the way up to the full-scale tollers because the CapEx cost or their facility cost is too high. And so that's where, unlike with some of the pilot plant facilities, we actually figured, okay, how many shots on goal can you have for X amount of money? If you only have $500,000 or $1 million, that might not last very long if you go to a toller. You don't have that many failure opportunities. And so with fermentation for us, we made the decision to say, okay, we could actually build our own fermentation facility for a lot less than having, let's say, 5 shots on goal with a toller. And so that's kind of the trade-off that we made. Not to say that there isn't a place for the tollers. If you're doing a commodity molecule, you're going to have to be going to the tollers, and you're going to want to be using like Brian's facilities, or let's say Dakota Bioworks or something like that, where they have that 5,000, 10,000 liter scale fermenter, because there, maybe you don't need to do 10 shots on goal. You demonstrate the performance, and then you're going to be going to the largest tollers. But at the end of the day, if you really are making a molecule that you're trying to sell at a profit, those tolling cost facilities are pretty high. And so you need to figure out, am I ever going to be making money at a toller? And so I would just try to encourage everybody, think about just making your own facility, especially for high-value molecules.
It's always that trade-off, right? You have to take a step back and really think of where you're going in the 5 to 10 years from there. Chern, I'd love to have you build on that in the same context of what kind of partnerships have you seen being mostly critical as you've been scaling?
Yeah, so I would say, I'm fortunate to be, participating in a number of programs, essentially a support structure for the company. So I'd like to shout out to the DOE program, Department of Energy. They have a phase shift. They have an I-Core program. To me, as an entrepreneur, you always have an idea. Everybody have an idea, right? So the thing is, like Mike Tyson has said, everybody got a plan until you got punched in the face, right? So the thing is, those I-Core program is essentially you conduct like 100 interviews over a span of 7 weeks. Is really help you get conviction what you're working on, because I hate to say that, you don't want to waste your own time, and you invested time and money, and you really need to build that strong conviction what you're working on, and there's a strong market for what you to buy what you want to build, essentially. So, essentially the DOE program. So let me think other. The phase shift, the I-Core, and also in northern Colorado we have Innosphere, which is like an incubator program. That really again, broaden your perspective. Because I came from a technical background. No one knows everything, right? So you have to be humble and think about the legal side of things. You have to think about IP, think about many other things. So it helps you really expose you. Those are all partnerships, essentially. Those are all community support too. Essentially innovation takes a village, right? So you have to really take advantage of those supports,
And I think a lot of it is also making sure you get in the room, like just having the ability to have those conversations with those potential partners. Even on the funding presentation there yesterday, it was exploring those potential partnerships across your supply chain too. Like, although you may not be building in the likes of Nebraska, but you may be having an impact there through your supply chain. So still reach out, see what partnerships they're working with, what programs are available, what's going on in their tech hubs, in their universities. Like, is there opportunities for you to be engaged beyond just your own practice and your own manufacturing?
Yeah, and if I could, I think that's really well taken. This industry, more than it needs anything, is it needs some more success stories. It needs more products being made at scale. Whether you're going to build your own facility or you're going to work with others on renting some equipment for a while, or rent some equipment and then form a JV or build your own facility and get the capital for that. You need to have those right partners in the room. Supply chain exists, and you eventually have to work with somebody that's selling a feedstock in some way. Engineering firms are going to be required. Equipment manufacturers are required to get any of this done. I think what's been nice about this is over the last 8 years, it almost feels like, at least our view of it, competition is less in this room and more outside. And if we can work together on those pieces to solve those challenges, the opportunities be much broader for everybody, rather than focusing on which state or which area or those types of things. Of course, we're all impartial, and we have the spaces that are there, but we really want to see those successes go forward. So any aspect that's needed, find those right partners that have the expertise.
That is a great segue, and I'm actually going to stay with you on that one, because that's a huge hurdle for us to overcome for those partnerships to take place is de-risking. And a critical piece we have kind of navigated through is the role of funding. And it's not only to de-risk these technologies for the innovators that are scaling it, but also the investors who are there to support that through that scaling process. So Brian, from your infrastructure kind of perspective, what does de-risking really mean for funders working with early stage innovators?
Sure. At the end of the day, de-risking is making an investor feel comfortable they're going to get a return on their finances. And I think it's easy to look at that as, does the company have the data they need from the early stages to go through proper, FEL1, FEL2, FEL3, to get financing in line and get rid of the tech risk that's there. But there's a lot more to it. In today's world, supply chain is a really big thing. There's a lot of uncertainty there, and having a good understanding of what that looks like is helpful. But as an engineer and getting to work with some great partners, my colleague from iFAB, Lenora's here. If you talk to her, she's great in the space of financing and loan guarantee programs and other aspects and financial tools to help get these facilities off the ground are really important. And it feels like that knowledge is especially amongst startup founders who are microbial engineers is not well known, and finding those folks that can help figure out how to get the right types of funds in the right places or seek out the right partners and that can help you actually get to scale is an important part of that beyond just the tech readiness level. Because I feel like a lot of us focus on, I need to get to 10 liters, I need to get to 100 liters, 1,000 liters, 10,000 liters. Those are important, but having that end goal and knowing where you're going, figuring out if your assets make sense to own or if you should lease them for a little bit of while and then form those partnerships for when you do actually need to go out and have those, that's really critical. So figuring out how you're going to fund those next steps or who's going to help you fund those next steps will be really important as well.
Yeah. It does. It takes a whole village, it takes a whole network, and then it takes a whole team. Because we have these founders that are primarily deep technology experts that you're then trying to have them in the funding room having these conversations with investors. So it's an incredible learning curve to have to kind of go through as an early stage innovator. So Geoff, I'd love to hear from you then from the founder side of what types of capital have you seen being most useful in your journey?
Yeah, I think, if you're doing something that's really innovative like everyone's doing here, where you're really trying to transition away from a fossil fuel-based economy into something that's more bioeconomy-based, venture capital is actually, I think, or angels in that extent, is really the best model here because, it's true capitalism to say, hey, these investors, they're putting their capital at risk. They're going to be taking the due diligence seriously in order to choose their winners and losers as opposed to the government trying to choose the winners and losers. And so even though it's difficult to raise venture money, I think it was said yesterday that the best companies and the best tech is always going to be able to find the financing. And so it is challenging, and you have to stick your neck out there and fail multiple times on trying to fundraise. But it really is probably the best and most efficient model. It also keeps the companies very honest as far as being efficient with their funds. And so, even though I think there's actually too much funding as far as the amounts that are being given to the companies, I think they could be much more efficient. With that said, I think the venture capital model is probably the most efficient way to do it. The way that maybe the public groups could maybe advance that is through those matching funds. And so I think yesterday, Nebraska has a matching fund. And so if you actually have some government money, and Michigan had the same thing, and we took advantage of that with Algo Scientific, they'll match 1-to-1, but they're also on the cap table now. And so they're not having to do the technical due diligence. They're relying upon other people's private money. And so that's actually a good gut check to say, okay, is this a reasonable investment? And so they could say to their stakeholders, whether it's the state of Michigan, state of Nebraska, whomever, they can say, hey, we're putting this alongside private money, as opposed to just having, let's say, an SBIR phase 2, which I think is personally the worst use of government funds, because the failure rate of those companies is so high. That money would probably be best used to actually just co-invest alongside private monies. And so I think, we're moving towards that. I think Nebraska doing the matching funds, Michigan does matching funds. That's probably the way to actually advance some of these companies that show some glimmers of hope, and just give them a little bit more cash to stretch that runway so that they can make it to the next stage.
So I'm going to kind of put a crystal ball question to you all. We've heard of a lot of these programs, like the iCore with tech hubs, with different capital investments, and the question is, what do you need right now? Like, what do you see as the gap? What's missing? There's a lot out there for startups to get a hold of as far as mentorship and resources, and all the conversations that we've had over the last 2 days. But from your perspective as of right now, what is critical? What do you feel is missing in the ecosystem right now to scale biomanufacturing, especially within the US?
Yeah, so of course, I think that there's a funding gap, how you transition from the VC model to more project finance, debt financing kind of thing. So yeah, it's not always a clear line where you draw it to finance your innovation. I mean, people always talk about valley of death. There's one early, it's like a sea turtle, right? Like how many sea turtles make it to the ocean, right? So there's a valley of death, front end of the innovation, and actually now there's a new valley of death. I would say not new, sometime between Series A and Series B type. Because, okay, a lot of time company have demonstrated demo plan. Okay, how do you fund your next commercial plan, right? Those, instead of 10 million, you need 100 million, 200 million. So how do you finance that? Yeah, that really takes a lot of conviction. Yeah, essentially there's I mean, just like solar industry went through the same thing. Like before it become bankable, somebody had to take the risk. You need the first solar plant, second, third, fifth. Okay, and then the banker walk around. Okay, I see 5 solar plant around. Okay, it looks like I'm ready to jump in. That kind of thing. Yeah, I think addressing the funding gap is critical. So that we know there's an end in sight. That we can transition cleanly to the commercial plan.
So we have, Brian, do you want to build on that? So we only have about 3 minutes left here before everybody has a coffee break, which I'm sure you're all excited about. But I did want to open the floor to you all, given that you're all at this front end of innovation and trying to scale and bringing partnerships. So I just wanted to give you all an opportunity to have a clear ask or one piece of advice or a call to action for the work that you're doing as we're closing out day 2 of this incredible conference. What are you hoping to achieve moving forward? So I'll start with you.
Yeah, I think, from our perspective, a lot of it also comes down to the team. And so, we, as a smaller team, we really take extra care in how we're hiring the next team members. And so, we look for team members that are really hungry as opposed to extra smart. Not to say that we have, not smart people, but, we really value the curiosity of the person as well as the drive. And so, we really have a culture of saying, hey, we're going to have tons of failures, but that's where you have the most learnings. And so I think accepting more of those failures as part of the startup trajectory and that path is actually really important. And so that's where, we've decided just to build things ourselves. We do a lot of this stuff in-house, and that's something where you can learn how to do these things pretty quickly, but you have to be willing to fail. And so, I think the culture of of the team is actually pretty important. And so I'd say, be willing to accept people that you might not otherwise hire, especially if they seem curious. So I know that you guys are getting emails from those types of people all the time. So take a chance on those ones that are emailing you constantly.
Well, coming from a university perspective, I can agree with that. Some of our best ideas come from our student interns. They don't execute terribly well yet at that point, but they do a great job there. When companies come to IBRL, we never promise success, but we promise we'll fail fast. And I think that we're all patient and waiting for this industry to move forward. But if you can find the right partners and those that have that knowledge, and that's why we're trying to bring that group together in East Central Illinois, you can move a lot quicker. And I think especially in today's environment where funding is a little harder to come through, stability and certainty is a little bit harder to come by, having those types of partnerships can really move the needle quicker. And whatever level of partnership that needs to be, there's always somebody out there that has that knowledge that can help you through the next step. So I think seeking those, being open to that, and thinking about the long term, where the better end goal is something that can be really helpful.
Yeah, so for me, to the audience, if you're industry partners or just take action, we're ready to give you kilogram samples. Try it, yeah, because adoption takes a village, right? So we all here, we all like-minded people. Try it. We are ready to send you a sample. So, yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you, Sarah.
I did just we are on the second half of day 2 of this incredible conference. So I just, again, want to thank the team here. It is so unique to be in a room where you bring together all the right players that need to see this scale. From the corporate side, the investment side, regulatory side, and the innovation side. It is just a joy. So I really encourage you all to get out into that networking room, grab a cup of coffee, have a chat, and we're all in this scale-up process together. We want to see the US biomanufacturing world succeed. And it just takes trial and error, it takes failing fast, and it takes trust. So thank you all, and thank you my amazing panelists for this discussion today, and we'll see you over coffee. Thanks very much.